not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chip. How are you today?
Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip on time, and
and boy, do we have a few bits of information to go over today. But the first thing I'd like to do, Chip, is I'd like to express our condolences to Lenny Kaplan. For those of you who aren't familiar with Lenny, that's the infamous low-price Lenny. Lenny lost his wife yesterday. Lenny has done a great deal of work for the city with the support of his wife. And, you know, they say behind every good man is a great woman. And Lenny's wife was definitely a great woman in supporting him for everything he's done. So I would like to offer my condolences and sincerest sympathies to Lenny and his family at this point in time.
well, I think that's just for Lenny's been involved with the city, the senior pageant, and many things. He's been involved with the city for as long as I can remember, very, very, very long time. He goes back to, predates the Carlton Viveris administration. He's a well-known figure, and while we're offering condolences, obviously, City Councilor Dan Rigo's mother-in-law passed away, and we offer the condolences to their families, obviously. Another person who takes time out of his schedule to serve the city, and whether you agree or disagree with any positions on these people take, the fact is they are attempting to do what they feel is the best thing for the city, and obviously it's always difficult to lose a loved one. So with that, let's begin the show. Huh?
Okay. Well, let's address the first pariah out of the past. Mayor Sutter has met with BFI or Republic Waste or whatever name they're going by now, in regards to the 7 acres of land that needs to be capped and monitored for 30 years, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm hoping that he looks for the best interest of the city in that we do well out of this. The problem has been, as you know, Chip, that the city council was put against the wall with the last administration, and now they're not going to tolerate that anymore, and they're very clearly going to look at this in the way it is. BFI wants to take control of that, and everything has a cost, and BFI wants to take control of that because then they get to dump there. They're going to convert a dump into a dump. They're going to dump what they call urban waste. Now, urban waste can be anything under the sun, construction debris, you name it, they're going to put it there. And the caveat on it was that was supposed to fund the costs of managing it, because BFI is not going to lose a dime. And if it doesn't fund it, then the city has to pay the difference. The problem I have with the deal, as was presented, was that there were no caps on what it would cost us. So we could do this, and it could still cost us a small fortune, and who cares? And again, I think the city council is being put in a position because according to reports, they have to act on it on Tuesday, and if they don't, it's not going to happen. So, we're going to be on the hook for all of it. We have to really look at this seriously.
Yeah, you're right. The old adage, never look a gift horse in the mouth, is very true, because you might not like what you see when you look. The reality is, I don't know, it seems that nobody ever learns in this community. When a corporation like BFI, who is a very profit-driven and very large, corporation, multinational, actually, probably corporation, and now they're going to give us something for free, and they're going to just make money to cover their expenses. That's absolute equine excrement. Okay, that is baloney. They're not going to pay taxes. They're going to make millions of dollars, and we're going to get saddled with any kind of cleanup costs. That is not a good deal. We should be looking at other companies. That's a profit-making endeavor. When they're going to take urban waste, and that's a pretty wide latitude. I mean, there are a lot of, in Fall River, we could classify some things as urban waste that most people wouldn't like to really delineate. But the fact is that, you know, it's a profit-making endeavor. And what that means that we could probably do better if we shopped around or even get a better deal from BFI. Because the reality is competition always gets you a better deal. When you go around and shop around for a price on painting your house or putting siding on your house, you look around, you know, sometimes people will move on their bids even when you buy a car. You know, if you're one of the people that buys a car with the first price the salesman gives you, I can tell you one thing: they've got your picture on the wall. They love to see you coming, you know. And you know, I just don't believe. I think this is another rush again, another 11th hour issue. And the fact is, look, if that land is going to be used and capped off with urban waste. The fact is, I'm sure that there are other companies that will come in, and I think the process should be very, 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 very judiciously looked at. All we have to do is look a few months ago to what happened when our former mayor needed money and he gutted the healthcare system. It is an absolute horror show. Blue Cross didn't even know the product they were selling. We've had numerous meetings. It's a mess. Why? Because nobody had time to research. Nobody had time to sit down and get the full specifics. It was like, we have to save money. We have to steal money from the employees. So let's run this through. And now everybody's upset. We had a meeting Wednesday that was an absolute catastrophe. We have people from the general public, not people involved in it, coming in and complaining every single day. It's a nightmare. Why is it a nightmare? Because again, you know, the gun to your head, 11th hour, you know, this is the way we do business in Fall River. I hope our new mayor does not fall into the same trap.
You know, Chip, you're right. And, you know, we've become so used to it that we don't fight back. And again, I think it's, you know, it's what I call the disease of Fall River. And we need to stop that. But let's move on a little bit. The big news for Massachusetts yesterday was that the Olympics made it through for Boston. Yay, we're excited. The problem I have with it is that all they did was make the national cut. The 4 communities that were in the running for the Olympics in the United States was Los Angeles, who had one previously, San Francisco, which has never had one, Washington, D.C., and Boston. So let's look at this from a reality point of view. LA's already had it. San Francisco is in California, but where in San Francisco would you put this? Because San Francisco is truly the city of hills. I know, I lived there for a short period of time. And Washington, D.C. The security for D.C. would just be astronomically impossible to meet. You have the President of the United States, you have the Congress, you have everything going on there. So Boston was the choice. Now remember, this is only the national choice. The Olympics is not coming to Boston yet. And just for a little bit of statistics on this, directly from the International Olympics Committee on how Olympics are chosen, locations are chosen. First off, the city must prove that it's big enough to handle the Olympics. With the games comes a large number of tourists, athletes, et cetera, and they must show that they can host the games. And now here's the key: in new stadiums and venues, not existing. And Boston's already saying, well, we're going to use the universities in Boston to host the venues. The International Olympics Committee says it must be new venues. Must be new. You have to have a mass transit system which can handle a huge number of people. Huge numbers, hundreds of thousands of people at the drop of a dime. Now, the MBTA is far from capable of handling that number of people at this point in time. Hell, they can't even make $1 so, you know, what are they going to do? But it just keeps getting on. It makes it very crazy, you know, the amount of security that's necessary. But I'm going to give you a statistic that might even surprise you, Chip. I'm not sure. But the last Olympics to make a profit in the United States or in the entire Olympic system, was in 1984. Excuse me, change that. Yeah, it was 1984. I'm sorry, 1984. And guess who that was? That was Los Angeles. And they made a $250 million profit under the 1984 dollars. So it gets to be very interesting. But their total cost for the Olympics was $413 million. Their final operating budget was $320 million, of which taxpayers of Los Angeles paid $75 million in increased taxes. And they showed a profit of $250 million. And it was the first Olympics since 1932 to show a profit. I mean, you're looking there at a definite, economic development for Boston and, the surrounding communities. But what I think was really interesting was the Salt Lake City Olympics. Their final operating budget was $2 billion. Their total cost was $1.2 billion, with an initial budget of $600 million, with a taxpayer contribution of $101 million. And their loss was so bad that all they wrote was 2.02. They didn't even say it was millions or billions. And their explanation for the loss is that the additional security measures necessary were in the wake of September 11th. No, I can see some of that. But when you look over these numbers, for all of these locations for the Olympics, I mean, it's horrendous, the amount of loss. Sydney, Australia, $6.6 billion final operating budget. Total cost, they won't even publish. Their initial budget was $3 billion, with $63.5 million borne by the public on the initial budget. Okay, taxpayer contribution, $2.4 billion. Loss, $2.1 billion.
Well, I mean, it's not surprising.
And their debts haven't been paid off yet.
Well, the problem is even the Olympics, if we go back to '84, we've got to look at the logistics of the Olympics. The reason that LA did, halfway decent is you got to realize that we have all these events and they can't be held in one area. You have to have a large area to build outlying stadiums for various events, and you have to build all these things, which is a tremendous burden on a taxpayer. So I'm sure that even though LA made a profit, the taxpayers never got their money back. I'm sure that it was a net loss for the taxpayer. Granted, businesses might have done well, and some of those businesses didn't even pay taxes, and probably anywhere near the taxes that the homeowners did overall, because they made a profit. But LA is a pretty spread out area. You look at LA, they even have an LA. They have a Los Angeles Fire Department. They have an LA County Fire Department. Very, very spread out area. The greater LA area. They also have a tremendous highway system. I mean, it's jammed most of the time, but they do have they have the freeway system. If you look at Boston, Boston is part of what's called the megalopolis. It's like one continuous city from Boston all the way down to Atlanta, and there's just not a lot of room. The reality is there's just not a lot of free space. And the transit systems and the free space that we have is very rural. It would take a tremendous amount of money to deal with this. But if we get it, everybody's going to go, yippee. But the fact is, we're going to take a bath. The taxpayers, if you look at most of these places and you look at the stadiums that were built for the Olympics, they lay derelict now, not being used. All over the world. The aftermath of the Olympics is like a science fiction movie when you see the world, after the nuclear war. It's like you see these stadiums and they're empty. They're not being used at a tremendous expense to the people. The Olympics, nice. Yeah, I love to watch the Olympics, but do I want to fund the Olympics? I mean, if Boston gets it, well, we'll have to deal with it. And, but I don't think that, I think the Olympics, they pay attention to the hype and, and just the, it's the Olympics. It's like, wow.
And Chip,
but it's really economically, I mean, statistics speak for themselves, and you just read them.
Yep.
The reality is, it's not a money-making deal,
No, it's
contrary to
not.
popular belief.
And the thing is that, everyone said, oh, well, it's an honor. Yes, it's an honor. And, I'm all for it. But Olympic hype has always been detrimental. I mean, the Olympics that happened in Athens, okay, has contributed, and it's been statistically as well as fiduciarily proven to have put Greece in the financial stratus it's in, and they can't fund anything. As a matter of fact, they can't even sell or give away the Olympic properties that they built for development because nobody wants them. They spent money on a promenade to have people walk back and forth between the different events. It's now a dumping ground for rubble and trash because they can't do it. I mean, they have no place to do it. So where would you put it in Boston? Many of the opponents of it coming to Boston have already said this is Boston's next big dig. And I firmly believe that. I believe that this will be Boston's next big dig. And the funny part about it is they're not even on the map yet. They're only through the second step of the first process. The next step is it's got to be presented to the IOC, and they have to come up with $150,000 to $250,000 as an application fee, which they're never going to see back if they don't get accepted. So, this is too soon to be quoting Olympic hype. And I went over all of it last night with a couple of people on the phone. But, in response to something, and I found this quote from George Bernard Shaw. People are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances they want. And if they can't find them, they make them. I mean, that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes.
Yeah. Well, it is. And let's face the, unfortunately, I'm a pragmatist. I'm not an idealist. I'm not a pessimist. I think I'm a pragmatist. I look at reality. The reality is, listen, the Greek culture is very parochial. They're very proud of their culture. They're very proud of the fact that they created the city-states, and basically they were the mother of democracy. And they have Greek schools for their children. They teach them the Greek culture. They teach them the Greek language. I don't know if you saw my Big Fat Greek Wedding, but that was a pretty funny movie. But it showed a little bit about how proud they are of the culture, and justifiably so. I mean, Greece was, Greece was the place that, basically our Western civilization began, because if you look at it, it was Greece, and then Rome basically copied the Greeks. Their gods are the same. They've got different names. They fundamentally the same kind of structure, and except except for the democracy, they had their emperors. But the fact is, it was the cultural, the mother of our Western culture. If the Olympics, which was theirs, they created the Olympics. If the Olympics was a profit-making endeavor, Greece would have never let it leave Greece. That's the reality.
Well, you know for a fact when you give away your claim to fame, and you give that away, it's not worth much.
That's right.
And the only people that actually make money off of this is the International Olympic Committee. They're the only people that do. They sell the airing rights, the broadcast rights of the Olympics to anyone that will buy it for billions of dollars at a pop. That money doesn't go back to the hosting community. Do we have enough hotels? Do we have enough, venues for this? And where in Boston? And let's even expand it a little bit. Let's go to a 25-mile radius of Boston. Are we going to find places to build a new venue? Well, I mean, you could probably go over to Revere and get rid of the dog track. They're not using that. The Wonderland you could probably get rid of too. But there's not a lot of areas that you got land where you can build things. So
no, you're right. I mean, you got to look at it objectively. The fact is, as I said, this is a very, 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 tight area. It's clustered, like I said. It's looked at it's looked upon as the entire East Coast as one contiguous kind of urban area. There's not a lot of rural areas, and the rural areas are very rural, and they don't have the kind of they don't have the kind of access that the look. The Olympics is a is an endeavor that TV stations love. They make tons of money on commercials. That's where the money's made. But the host communities don't make money. As I said, look, Greece would have never got rid of it. The old, look, if they're giving it to you, you better be careful. Just kind of like the landfill. When BFI gives us the landfill, you better take a second look at this offer. Just like Greece. Greece got rid of the Olympics because, as I said, the Greek culture is very parochial. That's their baby. If the Olympics was a money-making stimulation, and Greece has been in financial trouble for a very long time, and the fact is that if that could generate a positive income flow for that country, Greece would have said, nobody's getting the Olympics. We created the Olympics. They're all going to be held in Greece, and that's the way it is.
I agree. I totally agree, Chip. And but enough with beating up the Olympics in Boston. We'll have to see what happens. I now want to move over to the CDA, the Community Development Agency. I know it's like, we're in trouble. CJ's on the CDA bandwagon again. The problem I'm having right now is they had a meeting Tuesday, which, by the way, there was no public notice made about it. The city website had nothing about this meeting being held. If it was in City Hall, it doesn't meet the requirement of the open meeting law, which requires 24-hour access and availability to read that information. But a meeting did happen on Tuesday, and I wasn't present because, again, I had wind that it was going to happen, but when I spoke to a city councilor, they said, oh no, there's nothing scheduled for the city council to meet on the CDA. I said, okay, fine. So I just automatically assumed, which you should never do, that there was no CDA meeting, but one did happen. And from one of the people who did attend, they said all it was a bunch of people asking for money, which is basically what those hearings are. But here again is an organization, an agency, which, like most of Fall River, regularly violates the open meeting law, but again, has the hands reach out to them and say, give us money. And we don't have a standard to give that money away. And it's your tax dollars. So, of course, that Ken Fiola and the Fall River Office of Economic Destruction is there asking for money. And I'm going to give you the excuse I was given by Michael Dion when I met with him on why they have to fund that. They meet the standards given to them, and we spoke about this on a previous show, that we say he's got to produce 50 jobs, and he produces them. I said, well, do you take into consideration the fact that he lost 1,000 jobs? Oh no, that's not part of the benchmark. Well, that's a real easy benchmark to meet. Okay, so you can be an absolute failure but still be a success. And no matter how much the citizens and the people of Fall River call for the ouster of this organization, they keep bringing them back. And I'm going to quote Ken Fiola on this one. The reason why nobody gets rid of me is because every mayor has a scapegoat for every failure, which is probably very true. It's probably very true. But maybe it's time for the people of Fall River to rise up, show up at the next CDA meeting. And by the way, under the open meeting law violation, I did request that all actions taken at that hearing be dismissed and the process start all over again from phase one, because I'm tired of Fall River being able to, just blatantly, outright violate the open meeting law and say, oh, we didn't know, the system wasn't working, we don't know, we have an excuse. And the worst part about it is the Attorney General's office in the past, I don't know what the new Attorney General is going to do, has always been like, oh, it's Fall River, they're just like that. I get so tired of that, I want to vomit.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because it segues into one of the areas I wanted to touch upon. We see that Perry Long has resigned his position as whatever that euphemism they used for his job, neighborhood liaison, interplanetary whatever, super person. And, when they created that position, I opposed it. I've always felt that there were neighborhood associations prior to this position and I think that the neighborhood associations, if they have an issue, should have a direct access to the mayor, not a buffer. And it's up to the mayor to establish relationships with neighborhood associations. That's part of transparency in government. It's like having a public meeting, but it's a neighborhood meeting. And I think it's healthy and good for the city, for the mayor to have to deal directly with the people that he governs. I don't believe that liaison. It was a political position created for a political friend of the mayor. He has now resigned, and I have heard that there is already someone in line to be appointed to that position. And I will go on record as saying I will be very disappointed if that purely political position, patronage position, is filled again. Because that's one of the problems. I'm going to go on a little rant here. We only got a couple minutes. That's the problem with government. We create all these patronage positions, and they never go away. Everybody complains when they create the position, but then when the person who it was originally created for leaves, the next politician puts another crony in there. And they wonder why government continues to be so expensive. I will give you an example. In one of the courses I took in college, we talked about this type of position. And they said one of the most classic and grossest examples of this thing was a job in the civil service system of Great Britain in England.
I remember that position.
That job was to stand on the White Cliffs of Dover and look for the invasion fleet of Napoleon Bonaparte. That job was eliminated in 1951. Napoleon hadn't been around. If you check your history books, Napoleon hadn't been around for quite a while, and that position stayed on the books till 1951. This is wrong. This is bad government. It's bloated government, and we've got to stop. Let's hope we turn this city around by streamlining government, and that position is not filled.
Well, I agree with you, Chip, and I think there's a lot more jobs that need to go. And my number one question to the Sutter administration is, what have you done so far to cut the budget? What have you done so far to get rid of the patronage positions? How much of a savings have you already put into effect in your first couple of weeks on the job? Because I'll tell you right now, I can look at the budget. I can look at some of those jobs, and you can too, Chip. I mean, if you disagree with me, please, I know you'll argue with me. But there are plenty of jobs which are absolute bogus. I think that there might even be a job to stand on the shores of the Taunton River waiting for the Russian, the Russians to invade.
The Russians are coming, yeah. No, I will say, CJ, just for the record, I'm going to give them time.
Yes.
But what we have here is the first test, as far as I'm concerned. The first test is the Perry Long job. Mm-hmm. Because if there was ever a very, very new patronage position to deal with, it's that. That position was created for a school friend of Will Flanagan.
That's all it was. And remember, he was also found guilty, I believe, of a crime of misappropriating money.
Yeah, but I mean, it was created for a school chum. Mm-hmm. From what I was told, he had an assistant and an unpaid intern, and he never went there. He stopped going to the meetings, and his basic job was to hang around with the mayor all day and, I guess, talk about high school. But the fact is, this is not a position that's well entrenched in the city. It's a clearly patronage position that was unnecessary from the start, and if it's filled again, to me, it's a bad start.
I agree, and I believe that the people need to realize that. But it's that time, and I look forward to seeing everybody again next Wednesday on Spindle City Straight Talk.
You guys have a great weekend, and this is going to be an active year.